Hi, in this section, we're gonna to use time bomb notes as a way of organizing books on which you will have to read. While my book collection is not large, one of the difficulties is I was, I guess you could say I was trying to find a way to relieve myself of my problems with my distractions and my productivity. But I only have 6 months. So a lot of these books are not really designed with, uh, how could I say, with time limits in mind. Because they're long, they're different subjects. You have to focus on, uh, I guess what you have to do is you have to focus on uh, what it is that you want, what it is that you need, and what it is that you're addicted to. So over here, I have Obsidian. And if you notice, I've already organized some of these books. The thing about this is when you're reading books, it's not about which book you are reading, it's about which necessity you have to pull off. And the tighter the deadline, the more you want to procrastinate. And yet, every book is technically a procrastination because you're there to learn about the lesson, not about the actual contents of the book. And as upkeep uh, rises, the books are harder to organize. So, if you notice, uh, we have hope, learning decisioning by a judgment under uncertainty. That's my hope, and I read that as my next book. But the problem is, I have a fear of not facing my lack of exercise. So that's one of the things that you have to consider because even if though this is hope, you have a way of thinking that's almost contradictory because all the tropes are shining. For example, I want to become a better writer, but my pain is uh, I don't have much charisma. So, do I work on the charisma? Do I work on being a better writer? Do I work as a YouTube content creator? Or do I have a book on responding to global emergent challenges with just a quick read? So, do I focus on that? Or do I have another hope, The Life You Want by Bob Greene? I don't know if this book is outdated, but I wanted to read it, but it's another hope. It's a resource, but my focus on that resource is limited. So you have first learning from successful people. These two battle each other out. When you have a curse, it's something of a book that you must read, but it may not be in line with your goals. Or it may be in line with your goals, but it doesn't cure you. So biographies by president, that's, for example, a learning curve to be had because a lot of these presidents, they're successful people who went through a tough, grueling, uh, let's say, campaigns, and let's say they have to sacrifice their moralities. And then there's a pain, which is as a non-military person who, let's say, never knew about history, wars, the strategies. I'm starting to get back to that way of wanting to learn from military because it's they have a strategic mind for overcoming adversities, but it's a pain because it's based on ignorance. I don't know what guns are really useful. I don't know what exercise are really fit, what mindset breaking hell week are. And then there's another ignorance, which is ignorance starting a base, which is my current abode of being living with my parents isn't the most ideal spot. I don't have a sleep room, I don't have a reading room, I don't have a note taking room. It's too tight. So the hope is to set up a library for something I called roaming hope back then. Uh, it's supposed to be a cart with books that has quotes in it, while at the same time mixing it with selling fish balls. It's a original idea as far as I know, but there are others who have attempted just a cart with books. So when I need a base, I have this setting up gym for insane training, and it's based on a book of insane training. So you could see in this picture, in this micro picture, what is holding you back, and uh, the lessons I learned. For example, this failure to be productive is upbraided by reality because I was trying to multitask the whole day by mixing reading with YouTube's videos or starting on this fiction and then moving on to nonfiction. And while those are important ways to get into the flow, I found that I got too distracted by those elements. So again, I have miscellaneous because a lot of these books are they're specifics. They're dealing with certain things that are skill based, and others are fiction, others are non-fiction. So when you're making a list like this, the important part is emotion. So once I align myself to the emotion of hope and my desperation kicks in, then I will start to reading Judgment Under Uncertainty. But once I have feel the weaknesses of overcoming my fears, then I move to pain to learn from the military. And then once I have a certain type of momentum, I will shift to the curse, which is learning from successful people. So each of this is based on what your system is. If you have a system like Eat the Frog, which is like starting with the painful things first, the hard part first, then you go with pain. And that's will hopefully convert to hope one day. But as I find myself weak and distracted, and everything I do is uh, a distraction at this point, mainly because desperation here, failure to be productive first, desperation does not equal determination. So once I have that, I now have a emotional backing of the different books I need. So even now, as I'm organizing all these books, I haven't added my Kindle books. I haven't added my uh, old Kindle, new Kindle, Paperwhite books. I haven't added the documents in my computer. What happens here is that as I'm organizing this, the first priority is always on top. So I move this around. But the thing about reading is it's never static. Uh, you have an associated mind. So once you're reading a book, something pops out, you have to take a note of it. Each of these elements require a setup of nonlinearity so that you could uh, focus on what really is. For example, eventually this pain in terms of starting a base, I have to focus on that eventually. I have to find books on that eventually. I have to train my mind, my body for that. But right now it's not a priority. So I'm not highlighting this and moving this on top because I'm a weak person right now. I'm finding myself, again, the desperation is not equal determination. I'm finding myself in that kind of mindset. So eventually, I have to realize that once I've fulfilled that, I'm able to overcome my shortcomings, mental shortcomings. But at the same time, I have to overcome it. If I don't overcome it, then I can move on. So each of this is showing me the mindset that I have. My initial hope is turned into desire, which is throbs. Then I have a hope again that I may organize my life by reading a book. But then it's answered by the curse of not learning from successful people. And then it's addressed by the pain. So each of this is not set in stone as a linear model. It's about time bomb, about 6 months duration. What books that will teach you what type of lessons, what type of movements, even this, why is this a pain? Because I have other books here or other subsequent like this is Curse Detected by Books on French, that's not in this notes because it's not supposed to be a map of content. It's supposed to be a map of emotions. Like you're reading this, you're getting a perspective on what it is that's holding you back from reading all the books and going on a book sprint. And each of this is challenging because you're faced with the limitations of your consciousness. Even though I want to read all the books, even though I want to reject some of the books, even though I think I can, for example, I can learn from The Art of War or the 48 Laws of Power immediately and form a better strategy than reading Judgment or Uncertainty. These are books that aren't conducive to my movements, my thought. They aren't included here because they're just not uh, they're just not exactly the right books I should be reading. So as long as I focus on this field and ignore the sidebar for a while, I can work on just addressing the bits that are holding me back and delegating the books that are what the getting things done process called someday maybes into miscellaneous. And as I work on this, as I use time bomb notes, it will unravel to me what my inner weaknesses are. And so I can reorganize these books and read them in a linear manner, but also in a non-linear, mood-based manner where I read one book, got tired of it, move into a break or an exercise or a new book. Because one of my problems is that Kindles are more books than what my physical books are. But all of this is disarray because I've been into a psych ward for different times. So each of these elements are used to train me to overcome or address the physical limitations of my library and of myself. How do I convert my it's not a second brain, but more of a inner brain, inner thoughts, and focus on that and channel it into a situation where I'm actually moving in an, as the reminder said, an atomic habit, a habit that's on a larger system. And as I move to the system of questions, I will always have uh, this curse of taking my time, this job of reading NBA news, this job of finishing Judgment on all costs. And it reminds me that I'm mortal and that I have to become a higher level of mortal, a productive mortal, a master note taker, uh, all these things, all for a single goal of not only freedom, but saving people from the horrors of psych wards in general. And each of this is not complete. Like when I set this up, it's on a set of books I've already organized, and it doesn't contain uh, the full package, but it does contain what is the difference between organizing and reading, which is when you read something, you're building momentum towards certain books. And when you're organizing, you're trying to make those books into a list, and that just doesn't work because lists are they're meant to show you different parts, and by showing you different parts you want to do them, but once you lose your backups then that entire list is gone. But this is emotions. This is not a list. This is like a guiding post for which books you have to read, which books you want to read, and then understanding that each of those things, each of those nonlinear thoughts, they have their limitations, they have their experiments, they have their unification of thoughts. Like Hope for Learning This, you're you have a job of learning more about statistics by The Perfect Bet. It's a book that uh, it's not related to judgment or uncertainty, which is decision making, but it's a, a book that's similar in that it teaches the gambler's bias. And learning about those history, then you might say you're entering what's called the forest, I think, in linking your thinking kit. But it's different in that this is trying to tell you that maybe once you organize this stuff, maybe you're gonna go here, or maybe you're gonna go deep. And as you go deep, you're switching to a different book that's related, but it has a sort of want to it. It's not hope anymore. Like your hope of reading something is translated into a trap, and that trap can be an easily distracted book that you might read for a while, but eventually it's a black hole. And then I have this old book, and it's about a book on macroeconomics instead of behavioral economics, and it's a textbook. I don't want to learn this, but maybe I had to learn this in order to understand the statistics of behavioral economics. I don't know. But that's the curse on myself. That's why it's unsure if needed. It's an ignorant, based on ignorant thoughts. And that's why when you're digging deep, you're not able to, uh, usually you're not able to form uh, a clear, deep thought that says, okay, this research topic is going to be this and this and this book. Instead, you're forming clues, you're forming uh, thoughts that are based on mood links, based on your mood. And eventually, you have to accept that are you cursed to really read these books, or is there a way to fall back on decision making? So this is a lot of this is ignored for a while in favor of this. But once you start getting bored, once you start finding momentum to read a lot, research a lot, you have to question whether maybe this is the new subtask, the new That's not really a subtask, but it's the new next step, the new next action. And what's the next action for you? Is it your want? Is it uh, uh, your current unchangeable situation? Or is it something that you want to finally address in your life? And that's how uh, time bomb notes are used, because once you're organizing these things, you're not you're no longer in a reading mood, you're in a learning mood. And what I mean by this is that you have to shatter all your preconceptions, your ugliness, your laziness, your distractedness. You have to shatter all of that and question yourself whether, for example, as a YouTube content creator, do I just learn how to be a YouTuber, or learn how to vlog? Do I learn all of these things, or do I set it back? Because this is just a want. It's not a salvation. Unlike if I learn how to be a better decision maker by judgment or uncertainty, the book, it's a rare book, it's an expensive book, but if I am able to encapsulate the lessons of those biases, those heuristics that are contained in the books, those studies, then maybe I can finally move on to all these other contents. Maybe this will evolve. And that's how it works. It's not, you're not creating a reading list, you're creating a knowledge base of how all of this is in reality your schema, your identity. You're not the weakness of this kind of time bomb notes is that no day comes where you're just satisfied by what you've organized, what you've listed, what you contain. It's all about uh, finding out for yourself, especially for a reading list of what it is that will best help the situation you're in. And eventually, um, nothing can answer that. No book can answer that. A book can only be read and consumed and then inspire or teach or reach out to a new perspective. So you have to address it as a pain. Uh, it's still a humongous task that in other book reading lists there's no there's no emotions in them. There's only priorities, and researchers are actually better at this, at priorities. But humanity, mortals like me who have a 10-minute attention span, uh, constantly procrastinate. I need this mood links. I need this time bomb notes to uh, focus myself on what my identity is. And hopefully, this explains why you need to create time bomb notes. It's always a matter of when, where, before the how. When are you ready? When are you at your most comfortable state? When are you willing to not just read, but mix in exercise, mix in rest, mix in note taking, mix in different notes that remind you like this is not the same as this notes, but it teaches you that this is a book that you doubly want. It's both a hope, it's both a throb. Now comes the pain and what it is that you're learning there. Can you encapsulate that rather than just note it down, which is the problem with note taking, especially personal knowledge base. They're trying to note the desire, but in essence, they're trying to push back the desire also. They're trying to turn every desire into a reference. Whereas in a time bomb notes, you can't afford 6 months of references that will be gone All you can do is face reality that even if you want to read the book, you're probably never going to finish all of them. Even if you want to learn new skills or you want to become a better person, chances are you're not going to be that person because there's always something holding you back. And until you realize that, uh, until you stop clinging to attachments on a particular book or a particular set of libraries, like Kindles don't. The Kindles are bad, horrible at creating collections. And no matter how I try to organize these books, I seem to lose content of what I want to read. So each of this is an ever-growing list of more new content, and probably I'm not sure if it's better that I show a short list or a long list because eventually you have to decide for yourself how do you want to read books, which books to read first, and how do you want to organize them. And the better organizer will collect it by subjects or by tags, but they're losing, let's say, the emotions of urgency that comes with addressing this as a set of system that will push you along. So I hope this clarifies a bit of what I'm trying to show in this book list. Maybe if I the problem here is that when I create a physical book and try to note it down here, it takes time. So the recording will be mixed, but maybe after a while I'll try to show a before and after pic of these books once I actually gain momentum in reading them. I know, for example, that I'm only at page 18 of Learning Decision Making by Judgment Under Uncertainty, and it's it's a it's a it's a long process. I've never been much of a student, and then so what I'm trying to say is each of my system that's on a time-based basis has their flaw in that they're scary to start and they're boring to continue, and my mind is not perfectly in line with my body, with the psychiatric drugs making me sleepy. But each of this element is creating uh, links to uh, subconscious desire to free myself and to free others from psych ward. So that's the goal, but it has to flow down to the system, and the system decides what my priorities are, not anything else. So it has to be holistic. If I have hope, I have that hope returns, then I start back with judgment or uncertainty. But once that hope disappears, once it's become rote reading, then I have to come back and see if I want to, like this YouTube content creator, do I want to figure out which books to read first using time bomb notes? That's the element that I have to figure out. That's a challenge. And because each of this is a time waster or a time consumer, you cannot just let this be static. Every day or every week, you have to constantly review whether your hope, for example, is being on pace with what you want. Because if the hope is not on pace with anything, then you have to create an abraded by reality link that accepts your weaknesses. And that's how you kind of have to sort out your emotions. It's not a reading list, it's a feeling list. And that's basically the end of this video. I hope other things work out.